Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of The Way It Is, and I'm your host, Luca, as always, with Team Luca First at Remax Service First Realty, and we are really fortunate right now to be not in my office, which is a good thing, but we're here in Olivea, the restaurant of Stev and Deanna, George, and they were gracious enough to let us host us for the podcast, and we're here to have a great conversation about being a restaurant owner in the city of Kingston, and a long time one. And before we get into it, I've got some quick little notes here. You had your first job at Chez Piggy at age 18.
Yeah, that's where I started.
Correct any of these if they're incorrect. You also worked in Vancouver or Vancouver Island.
Yeah, at Souk Harbor House.
Souk Harbor House. Now you've done some traveling abroad as well, right? In Italy and Europe.
Oh yeah.
How much time did you spend there?
I backpacked through Italy mostly because I love Italy. It's my inspiration.
Yeah, I do too.
And other parts, France and Great Britain, and visiting. I've got family over there, and I've been up to other parts of the world as well, like South Africa and Australia and Thailand.
Wow.
Lots of great fun places.
So you two started your first restaurant in Gananoque.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So
Casabella.
Casabella. How long ago was that?
That was in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, the 9/11 year.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's right. So
Not a good time to start a tourism business.
now you'd worked in the food service industry. Now, Deanna, do you have experience in the food service industry too?
Yeah, we met at chef school. Stev and I did,
Awesome.
and then I also worked at Chez Piggy. So that's in Kingston. I worked at Chez Piggy and the Runcible Spoon and Windmills. This was
Those are
all like
names.
way
Wow.
for me.
I remember
way
the
back.
name, the Runcible Spoon.
Yeah.
I'm old enough I can remember that.
I know.
So, wow.
Yeah.
And you both went to Stratford Culinary School.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's where we met.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so what was the inspiration to start your own restaurant? Have you always been entrepreneurial? Were your parents entrepreneurial? What?
Well, for me, it was something I always wanted. From a young kid, I just loved restaurants. And I thought, I want to have one of those one day. And, I always helped my mom in the kitchen whenever she had a dinner party, and my parents liked to have parties, so there was a lot of cooking to be done. And that's how I got into it, quite young. So I think it was just a natural thing that was going to happen eventually. And then the place that we took over was called Cook Not Mad.
Okay.
Great
yeah.
rest.rant.
Remember that name?
And it was for sale. So we just thought, should we do this? Are we crazy? It's a big leap of faith.
Absolutely.
And we did.
And I mean, invariably, I'm going to guess the thought of running a restaurant and running a restaurant are two different things. So, I mean, because my running joke with friends, I call myself proclaimed foodie, and I like to cook, and I grew up in an Italian home, so certainly
Yes.
I have a bias to Italian cuisine for
Yeah.
sure. But, everyone says, you should open a restaurant. I said, if I win the Lotto Max, I will open a restaurant, because then I'll have enough money to not worry about if the restaurant's doing well or not. So explain those first few years, or describe them, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah. These first few years were trying to figure out how to pay the bills by borrowing money from one credit card that had a no interest for 3 months. And then at 3 months, transferring all that money to another credit card company that was saying, now you can have interest free for 4 months. So I did a lot of that, shuffling money around. It was, it's not really the right way to run a business, but we were fairly young and we didn't have the capital to start it, and we didn't, we didn't seek out investment, people to invest at that point, apart from my parents.
And we had our founders club too. We did have group of investors, kind of, which we're grateful to them because they got us all started.
Right.
Yeah, it was really cool because we thought, we could. Everybody gave $1,000. I don't know. I think we had 19 couples that gave us $1,000, and then they could come and eat at the restaurant when it opened, and that would be credit in the restaurant.
Right.
So it worked out well. I think they really appreciated it and felt like they were helping us get started. So it was win-win.
Wow. And what was your cuisine back then? I don't think I ever went. I'm pretty sure I never went.
Well, it was, there was a lot of Italian-based things on the menu, but it wasn't a pasta-centered menu by any stretch. I mean, maybe there was filled pastas, one, but I would do like a fish tasting menu and a meat tasting menu. And there were 5 courses, and we'd always have caprese salad in the summer with the fresh tomatoes, and we'd do very seasonal stuff like asparagus season. There was definitely lots of asparagus dishes, and every week it would change. The menu would change every week. We get into fava beans and I just try to find local suppliers that we would buy from. Like Patchwork Gardens was just starting out at that point. We were buying from them, I think, and other farmers in the area. Foreman Farm. These people I've had relationships with for 20 years.
You were ahead of the curve then, because that's become the big prominent thing, is this farm to table now over certainly the last decade anyway, right? And I think.
Well, we studied that at Stratford Chef School. That was the impetus there, was this farm to table cooking, Chez Panisse, other restaurants that were following in that, but they literally started the whole farm to table movement.
Wow, okay. Now apart from a hostess and a server, you guys were chief cooks and bottle washers too, correct? I mean, the life of a restaurateur in the beginning is not a glamorous one.
Cleaning up the sewer back up in the basement, you name it. Building, like redoing walls, painting. Everything. You got to do everything.
Well, and I think the food, and this is just my opinion, and you can correct me if it's not accurate, but the Food Network is probably what HGTV is to the real estate industry, right? Where everybody has this glamorous idea of what a celebrity chef is, and you just walk in and you do that, and you prep that, and I do this, and then you just stand there and taste and send out the dish and everything. Or like in HGTV, well, I can buy this house, and with $10,000, I can make $100,000. So it's obviously not reality.
I know. Well, we lived in the house too.
Oh, so it was part of the house then?
We lived in the attic floor, and
we had a bed and breakfast on the second floor. Like we had 4 bedrooms when we rented out, because that helped pay bills, like the restaurant. We needed all the income we could get. So we lived in the attic. And like our 2 daughters shared one half of the attic, and we shared the other half.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's funny.
So you get up in the morning and it's a cup of coffee and start.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the shift at 11 o'clock, midnight, it's up, go to sleep, and then do the same thing the next day.
Well, you never leave your business, right? I mean, that's just it. And I know that, and that's why I have these conversations with a lot of people, and like they say, and I said, well, I'm already doing the rat in the wheel syndrome. I don't know if I'd want to replace it with another rat in the wheel. No offense. Now, obviously, and maybe we'll go along chronologically from that initial starting point. Now, did you open Bella Bistro out in Collins Bay area? Did you keep both at the same time, or did you close that one?
There was overlap there. We were trying to sell Casabella, not because we didn't love it, because we did. It was our passion. It was a very difficult decision, but Gananoque is so seasonal. So we literally only had 4 months of business, and the rest was just, how do we get people to drive out here? And we could see the writing on the wall that this is going to be a very, very tough business to run. We just kept going further into debt, actually.
Right.
So we have the kids, and we thought, well, Kingston would be a better place for us, right? So we thought, well, and we saw this location, the olivea location, but it wasn't ready. It had a fire. That
was Cafe Max at the time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, then it was
a Greek takeout place,
right.
a little bit.
For a little bit, and then their coffee machine caught on fire in the night, and it was a mess, so they gutted it. But it was also structural issues, so they had engineers coming in, and then our Costas Dulas, he really liked us and thought it would be great, but it wasn't ready. It's going to be at least a year before this is going to be occupiable.
Right.
So he showed us the Bella Bistro location, which his family had run as Tommy's.
Yes.
For years.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. We
we
said,
took that over.
okay, well, in the meantime, let's do this.
Yeah, with Paul Mueller. He's the current owner and
So I've
chef
spoken
there.
to Paul over the years, actually.
So the
several
three of
times.
us started it together. Like we all put
Yeah.
in a third.
Because
Yeah,
we'd
wow.
all worked together, and
We went to chef school together.
then I worked with him at Pan Chan Show
Yep.
for years. And anyway, he was looking to get out of the working the graveyard shift making bread
Wow. Yeah.
and do something that was more of a day job.
Right.
And this is an exciting proposition. So we all went into business together.
And that had phenomenal success.
Oh, it's great. It's still
Yeah.
going
well, and
great.
it's still going because
We go there.
You sold out of that, and staff took it over, did they? Or
No, Paul.
Paul
Paul.
Paul's
Right.
got
Okay.
it.
Sorry.
Paul took
Yeah.
it. We left and he took it over, and because at that point we had olivea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've had success here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It took a few years.
This spring is our 15th year. So we'll
Wow.
have completed 15 years this spring.
it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't
Yeah.
it amazing how fast it goes?
Yeah.
Now, do you still do any cooking yourselves, or do you have a head chef, or how do you participate in the restaurant now?
Well, yes. I mean, I guess the answer is yes to both. There are chefs and wonderful cooks, and one of them, Matt, has been here since the very first day.
Wow.
But because typically cooks and chefs, they move,
Yeah.
they move on. They go
Yeah.
to new things. They want to try something new.
Yeah.
I sometimes like say, you gotta, spread your wings, find opportunities. But they run it.
Yeah.
They run the kitchen. But every now and then I get a call. Oh my God! Especially during the last few years,
Mhm.
so and so can't come in. They're sick, and we don't have a grill cook tonight, or we don't have a pasta cook tonight. Any chance? So, I mean, it's a little hard because I haven't been doing it,
Right.
5 nights a week. So, but then I come in and help out, and Deanna's done it as well. Like,
Yeah. That's maybe one of the lucky things for both of us since we went to chef school and we're chefs. So we can always help out. Yeah.
Right.
We can.
I mean, it's like riding a bike, I guess. Like
Yeah,
you say,
yeah.
right? The skills are
Yeah.
always
You
there.
can still do it, but maybe not as well. But for me
Not as
especially.
efficiently, maybe, I guess
Yeah.
we'll say.
Not as
I'm
well as
getting a
the
little
young
older
people.
now, and my feet hurt a lot when I stand
Yeah.
That I would get for sure.
But it's fine.
So, the pandemic hits, obviously, and everybody pivoted to the takeout thing. Did you guys do the same then? Did you do a lot of takeout?
Yes. Oh, ton. I mean, that's all we could do. So we did it. It was-
Yeah.
And I know some restaurants haven't gone back to table seating because
Sure.
I think Matt Day in certain parts of the season when
Yeah.
he's got that
He's
food
got
truck
that food
outside
truck
now
outside, yeah.
because I mean a lot of restaurateurs or operators learn that hey, you can have a skeleton staff,
Yeah.
you reduce your overhead a lot, and you're still pumping out probably the same amount of volume or close to it, I would guess, right? So what was your experience, I guess, with the takeout?
Well, it was fine, but it certainly didn't have the same revenues that having a
Right.
dine-in restaurant have. And honestly, I didn't enjoy it because you don't have the interaction with the customers. It doesn't feel like a restaurant. Why did I get into this?
Yeah.
I love the restaurant. I love the feel of it. This is people coming to the door with masks on going, oh, here's your food. We were leaving it on a table and then walking away, and they would pick it up or running to their cars and putting it in their trunk and closing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really what I signed up for.
No. And I find, and I, tried to do as much takeout as I could, within reason, but most food just doesn't travel well, right?
I know,
you
yeah.
want to eat it when it's put on your plate or when it's brought
Luckily
to your
for
table.
us, pasta does.
Right.
Does pretty good, yeah.
it's kind of like the Chinese food or pizza
Yeah.
or
pizza's
pasta, you know.
Yeah.
And salads are pretty good, but you know, I don't feel great about serving like the chicken dish with the sauce and the gnocchi.
And then into cardboard.
And it goes in cardboard, and I mean, they're coated, but they do so good. Like, you can't get all the good stuff, and you can't plate it so it looks nice.
It's crammed in.
You know?
Exactly.
And then people often probably get home, and then they leave it, and then they try to reheat it, and I'm just, you know, the end product is probably not, well, it's definitely not what you get in the restaurant.
Yeah.
So, hard to feel proud of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody's was accepting because that was the standard. That was what we had to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the restaurant community in Kingston. I mean,
Sure.
I had, because I always remembered hearing this, that Kingston had probably most restaurants per capita in like Canada or North America or it was some
I've
crazy,
heard this.
some crazy stat. And I had Rob try to research it this morning. He said, no, there's a comment about it on the Ontario Ontario restaurant site or whatever, but there's no confirmation of it. But we have a lot, and by restaurant, that's everything from a Burger King to a Wendy's to
Starbucks,
everything in between, right? Well, and they've crept into the space, right, with their sandwiches and wraps and things like that, because they know. So, is it, first off, I mean, outside of those types of establishments, we're talking restaurants now, because you've got the Everly, you've got Heist just opened now and everything, and you know, some other long-time restaurants that have been around, Greco's, Kofinas family, and Amadeus,
Scott,
and Tim Pater, who's done exceptionally well with his brands. Is it a supportive network? Is it a supportive group of, like, do you guys...
I would say if you went back 20 years, no, it was not a supportive network.
It was more cutthroat.
It was a lot of competition. But over the years, it's getting more cooperative, and we're trying to put together a Kingston Restaurant Association so that we can, you know, lobby for different things with, you know, the municipality or the
or like tourism dollars.
government, get tourism grants, you know, like. And going through that whole COVID experience where you had to fill out so many forms and try and figure out where this subsidies and money came from and how to do it, I think a lot of people threw up their arms and said, I just don't know, I need help. And there really wasn't any, you know, for a lot of people. So I think there's a real place for it in Kingston, and maybe, you know, 10 years ago, people wouldn't have been so into it, but I feel like now we've got a younger crowd that's really community minded. A lot of breweries are opening up and that are serving food. And I really think community is a very important aspect of us being successful. It's not competition. Good competition is good.
Yes.
Not bad.
Well, and you know, and certainly I hope no one gets offended, any of the restaurateurs get offended by thinking we've excluded them because there's, you know, Gocan and Tango and Mela.
Well, like especially, Gocan and Casa, Gocan and us share a basement, so we're very friendly.
But I mean, I liken it to this corner now with you and Everly and Heist and everything. I mean, it's no different than a McDonald's sitting up across from a Wendy's. You're not going to get all of the people, but they're not going to go to McDonald's every day, and they're going to want to try Wendy's, right? So they're going to want to try your establishment or their establishment and everything else. So you're right, competition is good always for...
Sure, and like for years that Jack Astor's was
empty,
just this concrete bunker of an old bank building, and it sat there empty for years. It was just an eyesore. And so we were so happy when Jack Astor's, even though it's would be considered competition. Also, it gave us a ton of exposure because people would come to and they'd say, "What's that little place across the street? It looks kind of neat." And they, you know, so bringing people down to the downtown core to dine means that more people are going to see other options and try them. And I think high water's going to float all the boats.
Now, and not to put you on the spot or make you air, personal financial information, but I mean, the world has changed. We're in a food crisis, essentially, in terms of the cost of acquiring food. So not only at the grocery store, but I mean, you guys trying to buy it wholesale or wherever you get it from. How's that affected? I always used to, this from just my knowledge and doing what I've done for so many years, but the margin always used to be about 32. You wanted your restaurant to be hovering around 32 to 40, no more than 40% food costs, right? Where's that at now? It doesn't exist anymore. Or what?
Well, honestly, you just have to raise the prices to match
that
that
correlation.
same correlation. Otherwise, there's very little profit in a restaurant.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so you have to really watch those percentage costs a lot.
So it begs the question: are most restaurateurs doing it because there's a passion to do it? Or
Yes. Why else? Yeah, people think that they're going to make a ton of money. They see busy restaurants on a Saturday night. Yeah, they're making all their profit on that night.
Yeah.
And the rest of the week, when it's half empty, they're losing money.
Yeah.
Or breaking even.
Right.
It's a very difficult.
Well, and models have changed now. Most establishments are closed Sundays and Mondays, right? Or maybe even up until Tuesdays, right? Because
a lot of places we're open 7 days a week or 6, and now they're just open 5 or 4.
Yeah.
And they've stopped doing lunches.
Yeah.
Or just do lunch on the weekends. They've really shrunk it down. And I think the reason for that, well, first of all, I've heard a lot of people say, I can make the same profit because I got rid of my days where I had loss.
Yes.
And then you can't find the employees, the skilled employees. And it's much easier to work with a smaller group of employees, especially these days, because people get a tickle in their throat. Oh, I'm sick, I can't come to work today. And you hear about it last minute.
Yeah.
So you've seen the closures, right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, folks, we're closed tonight.
Yep.
Yeah.
2 people called in sick. We don't have anybody to cover those shifts.
I was going to touch on that, and I'm just going to say, I mean, are there people coming in to the food service world? Is Stratford still a busy culinary school, or is St. Lawrence still a busy culinary program? Are there people coming up and through, or do they only just want to I want to graduate and be the chef. I don't want to work my way up through a kitchen and do prep or line cook or anything like that. Have you seen any kind of shift in that mentality, or?
I would say that there are no people at the chef level that aren't working already.
Right.
There just aren't. We've had probably 100 resumes for servers and 1 for a cook with experience.
Wow.
It's like 100 to 1.
Yeah.
50 to 1.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seems like every resume that comes in is like, I want to be a host, I want to be a server, and nobody wants to cook. So I think we're really looking to the high schools now.
Right.
So we're going to, get a lot of high school kids in there.
Yeah.
It's their summer job, but foot in the door, they start doing some prep and some dishwashing, and then they gradually or quickly, because there's a lot of opportunity now to move up very quickly.
For sure. Right.
To, if you've got the skill to open oysters or, plate food. Some people are really good at it, and they just have a knack, they're artistic or whatever that might be, or they're passionate. This is the most important thing.
Yeah.
They gotta love food, they gotta be
do it.
passionate about doing it, and they want to do it. And we're finding people like that. Not a ton of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely the last few years have really sucked that dry.
Yeah.
But I feel optimistic. I feel like it's coming back. But it's going to be young, really young kids.
Yeah.
Starting it.
Which comes with its own set of challenges too, a little bit in terms of
It is. They don't.
life experience and inexperience and that kind of thing, right?
Sure. I have to take this week off. My parents have booked a cottage in the Muskokas and I'm going.
I know.
No, you can't take a week off in the summer. But you can't say that to a kid who's going off with their parents to family vacation. So,
Well, you can. You just still won't change their mind.
Yeah, it won't
Yeah, they're
change.
just going,
You just have to accept that. And we're at the position where I've had people say, I can't work weekends. okay, you're hired anyway. I mean, all the standards are just thrown out the window because you just need warm bodies.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
And what's, I mean, obviously there's also this big movement in terms of a living wage, and is it the wage that's not attracting people to these jobs, and are they too busy? I mean, I'm still dumbfounded by this labor shortage and the fact, because you must do it even more than I do in terms of sit back and say, well, what are they doing then? Like, what is this demographic doing if they're not employed right now? I mean, and how are they paying for their devices and their data?
Yeah.
Or maybe they are living
Get
at
it?
home.
I think they went and lived at home, and they went back to their parents' homes. A lot of them,
Yeah.
because they lost their job,
Yeah.
and then they kind of I just want to work part time because I don't have that many expenses.
Right.
I mean, fair enough, but that does take people out of the workforce that otherwise would be here. I don't know. I feel optimistic though. I think it's changing.
Well, that's
I think
encouraging.
we're coming out the other end of that, and I certainly see in Gananoque because we have Riva there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of kids at the high school that are just want to work.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, for the summer, no, I'd work now on the weekends. They want to work. So, yeah, I feel pretty positive about it.
Right. And so, I mean, based on everything we've just discussed, and that I'm glad you touched on it. So you operate Riva as well in Gananoque.
Yeah.
And are you also involved in the Ivy?
Oh, the Ivy? Well, we recently passed the Ivy on to new owners.
Okay.
Two guys that used to be chefs
Okay.
for us at Riva.
All right.
They'd already left Riva to do other things.
Right.
The Pump House Creamery, one of them, and Chrysler House Bed and Breakfast. He was doing meals and dinners there. Anyways, they wanted to expand and do something a bit bigger.
Okay.
And heard that we were just ready to. We took on too much during the COVID years. Not the right time to open a very large
You seem
restaurant.
to have, that seems to be your MO, Step, right? You got 9/11, now you've got
Oh yeah.
COVID.
You know when we opened Olivea? 2008.
Perfect.
So, anyways, yeah, it's like
You can't make this stuff up, right?
you can't, you really can't. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, the best companies in the world started during the hardest times, and you learn how. Oh wow, we've got to really watch. You can't have waste. You got to be careful with your food costs and your labor costs, and you learn right from the very start
Yeah, efficiencies.
how
Yeah.
efficient you have to be.
Yeah.
And then that carries through, so it becomes a much stronger
Absolutely.
business over time. But yes, the Ivy is no longer in our lives,
Okay.
which is, I think, a good thing. It was quite overwhelming, and we have 2 other restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
And although I was told once, after you get to 3, it's much easier. But I think what that person meant was an extension of the same restaurant with the
Right.
same menu
Right.
and the same structure and the same everything.
Right.
But when you open something that's completely different, that's really a whole
New restaurant.
new restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very seasonal.
And it
But
was
the
very
guys that are taking it over are really talented. So we're
Yeah.
happy for that.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, and and they say that about children, and I'll quickly
Right,
segue.
yes,
You have 3
same
children,
idea.
and you've raised them because they say, once you have 2, and 3, and
Yeah,
4,
yeah, exactly.
then it's just like.
You might as well have 10. The kids will raise the other. It's less work for you. Right.
But your
Sure.
children grew up
In the restaurants, yeah.
business, right? So was it the classic sort of story where they were always here after school and helping, or even in the back, like your experiences?
Yeah.
They always in the kitchen then, or?
Well, we had this vision of the kids coming home and shelling peas, after school, helping break down
Peel
chickens
onions.
and peel onions and stuff like that. That wasn't really the way it worked out, but occasionally,
They helped sometimes.
like we get a
And once-
bushel of fava beans, and they would
Yeah.
enjoy taking them out of the pot.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. We didn't force that on them. We weren't slave parents.
Yeah.
You know, so but it was kind of cute when I'd be cooking at the stove and the kids, there was a back staircase that led right down into the kitchen, and they'd poke their heads around and say, "Night, Daddy." You know, so
That was at Casabella, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And both girls started working when they were 13 in the restaurants, but like as hosts or
Right.
bussers. And
Yeah.
yeah. And Harry too, really. They've all ended up working with us in some way.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And I guess, given what you have going on now, a part of running a restaurant isn't just about the food. You've got to learn how to be a business operator, right? I mean, and that, I think there's maybe one of the cruxes of a lot of restaurateurs where they're great at their craft, which is, being a chef and a menu and all of that, but certainly the ins and outs of operating a business and overhead and the economics of it. I mean, was that something you had any experience with it, or you just learned trial by fire when you went?
I don't know. I think I just have a head for it.
Okay.
When we did Casabella and we first started, I did the books. Well, I
And
did the payroll.
Yeah.
An accountant that would eventually get a bookkeeper, but at the beginning, I was just writing everything down and figuring it out.
Right.
No experience.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm good with numbers, so I figured it out. And we went to Stratford Chef School, and they do teach you about
Okay.
business. There's a whole business
Food
aspect
costing,
of it.
for sure, yeah.
Food costing and just how to set it up and look at your labor costs. And so I was always like crunching the numbers. Okay, how does this? Ooh, okay, that doesn't work. How do we make this work? I mean, recently the whole Michelin-starred restaurants of the world are in a crisis right now because look at Noma,
Mm-hmm.
top restaurant in the world for years. They're closing because in order to make their model work, they had to have free labor.
Wow.
Now, if you're a young cook and you want to put it on your resume, great, because you'll go and work there for free. In fact, you'll pay to live in Copenhagen so you can work at Noma for free.
Wow.
But the whole international outrage about, this is not right, there's no living wage, how do these people survive, and so on. So that model doesn't work.
Right.
But in order to create that kind of intricate food, you need to, the labor costs are just too high.
Yeah. Yeah.
So luckily, we don't create that kind of food. We create food that I think it's all made here. And it is more time consuming than buying pre-prepared stuff
Mm-hmm.
and heating it up. But there's a balance.
Yeah.
We found a balance with labor costs and food costs and overhead that works.
Now, I mean, were you both born and raised in Kingston?
Belleville.
Belleville? Okay.
Kingston.
I was Kingston, but, growing up here, doing real estate for my entire adult life, is Kingston, maybe it's changed now, but was a city with a demographic that maybe didn't support restaurants in terms of its socioeconomic demographic, and in terms of high-end or fine dining, I guess? Or can you comment on that at all? Or do you feel that that's changed? Or did you?
Growing up, there was Clark's.
Right.
Clark's by the
That's
Bay.
right.
Yeah.
There was the River Mill.
Yeah, we're still going.
There was, I can't remember the names of some of the other ones, but there were quite a few fine dining places. And they were, I think they did quite well.
Mm-hmm.
But there weren't a lot of them. It wasn't like
Right.
Toronto. You need the
Volume.
the demographic base. And yeah, it's like they have to have that disposable income.
Yeah.
But I think if you can look at the types of restaurants in a city and really have a very good idea of the demographic base.
Yes.
So, if you look at Kingston, I think there's a lot of student accessible dining,
Yeah.
especially in this area, Princess Street and
Yeah.
and up in the hub and wherever. So lots of bars and lots of kind of Asian influenced
Yep.
restaurants, pizza. Oh my God, there's so many pizza places, and so on. We're kind of lucky because we're bridging the gap a little bit with pasta, which is every student's favorite filling meal. You know, people come here. It may be a little more expensive than some other place, but they feel full and they love it here, and so we've won them over. But they also bring their parents here, and the parents are quite happy because there's, I think it's a good restaurant.
Well, and Kingston, I can speak to this. We've certainly benefited from a lot of people that have relocated to the area. I mean, Kingston has grown quite a bit over the last decade in terms of people that migrate here, that sort of 55 and over crowd that are selling off in other centers, whether it's the GTA, Montreal, Ottawa, or whatever. And they've had various connections here, whether it was Queens, whether it was whatever, right? So we've seen a lot. I mean, the county didn't get all of them. They got quite a few of them, but we've seen a few people migrate here because of, let's face it, Kingston has a lot to offer, right?
A lot. And I agree. It's changed.
Yeah.
It's changing, and I think it's getting better. As you said, this demographic is flooding into Kingston.
And I think the expectation is they like something. They want that, right? They want that higher level. Or
really do.
Yeah. All right. Well, I won't keep it too much longer. I mean, we could probably talk all afternoon. I'll start prepping in the kitchen for you soon.
Sure.
I guess, given everything you've done, everything you know, we'll end it at what advice or what have you learned or what advice would you give to anybody now trying to start a restaurant? Stay away or what?
Just don't give up. I always think people ask us about success or how, but we just never gave up. We just kept going. But that, and you have to love it. What would you say?
Well, I think it goes back to the passion thing. If you're not passionate, do not do it.
Yeah.
This is not something where you can kick your feet up at home and call it in. You got to be there.
Yeah.
And for the first decade here,
one of us was here for most services.
Every single day. Like it's not.
Yeah.
We were open 7 days a week too, so it wasn't like just a 5-day-a-week job. No, if you're not prepared to put in to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
No,
but be available too.
Yep.
There's always a crisis. There's always something. And if you don't like that kind of stress, where the hot water isn't working, the fire alarm is going off. There was a fire here. I got to call. The place is on fire. And there's been the stress is very, very real, very real.
Yeah.
And so I would just say you gotta be passionate. You gotta know that this is what you love to do.
Right.
And that's what got me into it. That's what keeps me doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And without that, I just know there's no way.
Right. Well, we'll end it there. That was awesome. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Great.
Good.
Thanks.
That was great. That was awesome.